Just when I thought I was out, they dragged me back in. Viewers, listeners, it's bloody back on. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory, and despite my camera issues and Andy's camera issues, we are all here. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. My name is Rory, and I am joined by my very good friends,
Adam and
Andy.
How are we doing, boys? How was your weekend? I'm going to start with you, Andy. Good weekend, bad weekend?
Yeah, it's been a decent weekend. Looked after the dog in the spare time, watched a bit of football,
Nice.
recovering from persistent backache. It's been all right.
Ups and downs.
Ups and downs,
Nice.
indeed.
Adam, what about your weekend?
yeah, very good. Good, relaxing one with the family. But you boys are going to have to potentially pick me up as I hear news of Gareth Ainsworth potentially departing for QPR. But we'll wait and see because there's so many rumours about that job, and that's a nutcase of a place. So hopefully he realises his ways and stays a legend at Wickham. But we'll wait and see, Rory. How about yours?
We've got everything crossed for you. Well, I was in Turin for the good lady's birthday. We're going to get onto a story about that later, but it was a really beautiful city. If you're ever in the north of Italy, I feel like it's a city that's a little bit ignored because it's so close to Milan. Beautiful city. It's got a river. It's got mountains. It's got everything. It's got incredible food. So really good day there. Was definitely helped by the fact that Arsenal turned it around because that was going to be a very moody walk around Turin otherwise. But yeah, good weekend. And honestly, it's like we've skipped winter. The weather is insane here at the minute. So really, really beautiful. But guys, we're going to kind of do our little fun stories of the week before we get into the main show. And I want to start with the Serie B promotion race. Now, it is getting hot down there. There's so much competition between the places. Not only are Bari, of course, involved and still keeping the fight, despite trying their best to fuck it up. Currently, between second place and all the way down to fifth, they are separated by 4 points. We have Genoa on 43, Bari on 40, Sud Tirol on 40, and Regina on 39. You've even got Cagliari below them on 36, not out of the fight yet. It feels like Frosinone at the top are head and shoulders above. They're currently on 55 points. They're definitely going to win the league. I think they're still led by Grosso as well, right? I need to quickly check that. Fabio Grosso, ex-World Cup winner, is their manager, absolutely killing it. But just keep an eye out on the promotion race in Serie B because it is hotting up and there's a lot of teams around there. So Bari have just drawn 1-1 at home to Cagliari. Despite Cagliari going down to 10 men, Bari made really hard work of it, went 1-0 down, but then managed to equalise in the 93rd minute through a penalty, I think, just to kind of save their disgraces. But it is getting interesting down there. So towards the end of the season, we might get someone on who can talk a bit more Serie B in detail. But guys, if you have the chance to watch it, it is getting great and fascinating down there. Also, check out the Palermo goal by Verre, scored from his own half in the 38th minute. Always love seeing that. Bit of a Beckham. Like, what do you think of it, Adam? He proper scooped it, eh?
Yeah, I think it was one of those that's kind of reactionary, and one of our guests, Alfredo, was there, so I'm sure there'll be some sort of vlog that he'll be sharing on YouTube. But yeah, he did look a bit tanned after being in the sun of that Palermo Stadium, so it's not very covered up there, to be fair. But it did look epic, to be fair. Yeah, it was a fantastic hit. That's all you can say.
That's it. Maybe not Beckham, maybe more. Do you remember when Matty Taylor absolutely spammed one for Portsmouth? I think it was.
Similar like that.
He'd love to hit that fella.
He could absolutely spam it. Eh? But we need to talk. Adam, you kind of touched on it, and then Andy, we're going to go to you. But Adam, you kind of touched on it. Possible end of an era for Wickham. Possible. We got everything crossed for you that it isn't. For people who don't follow Wickham or aren't aware of Ainsworth, how much does he mean to that club? Like, he's been there a long time, eh?
I think I reflect on it tonight, kind of thinking he's almost the fabric of our team right now, the club, and he instills this kind of confidence in the team and the players. And it's when you get in, people kind of say how superlative his skill set is. Like, you know, when he first came to the club, obviously he started in a caretaker role after some really poor management runs. We had the likes of Gary Waddock and Peter Taylor in charge, for example. So that shows you how the depths were at that point. And he almost got us relegated. And I think, I don't think any other club would have kept him under the circumstances, but we couldn't afford to sack him. That's how bad it was. But I think he learned a lot from that season, and he's just like kind of been one of us, almost like a fan, just managing the team, pushing the team, and he's done some incredible stuff. I mean, just to get us to the heights of the Championship in what was like deemed like not even possible with a team like Wickham. It's incredible. And I was reflecting to you guys offline, it does feel like a Fergie when he left Man United moment, where you kind of don't appreciate necessarily what he's done until he's left. And it does feel like, I don't begrudge Ainsworth ever leaving us. That day will happen, and if that happens this week, I'll be gutted. But it's a surreal experience because we've been so used to having him in our team and just leading us. And, I think the fact that still he rahs opposition team supporters and, that's kind of that Wimbledon ethos. I think that's where he's drawn that from. He's kept that camaraderie within that kind of team spirit. I don't think there's a manager like him about. And I know that sounds really far-fetched because he is kind of different. He has his own style. He is a rocker, and you don't get those kind of characters these days, especially saying from an English perspective. Maybe abroad you might see it a lot, but certainly not from an English perspective. You tend to see that. So personally, we'll be absolutely gutted if he does leave us, but this day was going to happen. It just feels maybe the timing's just not right. I'd be happy if he left at the end of the season, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think leaving mid-season would always leave a bit of a sour taste in the mouth. You'd be like, oh, you could have just seen that last season out. Like, you've been here 13 years. You can wait that extra 4 months, if you know what I mean. Like, and just kind of, I can kind of get that. And obviously it's in different circumstances now, looking back at it with hindsight. But I remember when Dario Gradi left and how much it took Crew to get over that and how long he there. Now, obviously, looking back now, we wish he was never there. But at the time, how much that was kind of like such an adjustment period for the club. So I do remember. But yeah, fingers crossed he doesn't go anywhere just yet for you. But Andy, speaking of ends of eras, you're going from one set of bastards to another set of bastards.
Yes,
potentially. Fill us in on the Manchester United ownership takeover situation. What do you think of it?
Let's try and keep it short but effectively sweet. So the Rain Group are the banking group that have been charged with effectively finding suitable bidders. The club, as we're aware by now, it is up for a sale or fresh investment, but I think it's unlikely at this stage people are going to give the Glazers a few £100 million or billions without wanting to know who's in charge of the club. So far there's been 2, I think, confirmed bids. So one of them is from the Ineos group, headed up by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He was born in the Greater Manchester area, tried to bid for Chelsea last year as well. Obviously, he's got the sporting interest in Nice. So I suppose there's concerns of how that will work if both teams are competing in the Champions League. But if Red Bull could make it work,
that's
can
fair.
they. But he's also obviously got other sporting interests, such as the cycling team, which he took over from the Sky. He's also got the sailing team headed up by Ben Ainsley. So there is a big sort of sporting portfolio there, if you like. So, and there is a second Qatari bid. Now, it was a few weeks ago, a lot of people were saying, well, because of the ownership situation with PSG and the fact they're not looking to sell up, it was thought that a bid was unlikely. However, that appears to be incorrect because we have Sheikh Jassim Behemoth Al Thani, who's entered the mix. Now, he's the head or chairman of the Qatari Islamic Bank, basically. So he's very high up, and obviously the majority shareholders of said bank is the Qatar investment or the Qatar investment fund, basically. So similar to, I guess, with Newcastle, you've got like the Saudi investment fund, similar kind of thing, essentially. And obviously the chairman of that one. In a way, I think, to cut a long story short, there's not too hard to find links between the Qatari ownership, the Qatari government, well, Qatari ownership of PSG, should I say, and the Qatari government, and also there. So it's being marketed or attempted to be spun as being just an independent dude who's just woke up one morning and thought, you know what? I fancy bidding for Man United. He's apparently a lifelong Manchester United fan,
Okay.
by all accounts. So,
Cool.
yeah, he's just a random guy with a few billion quid to spare, and that's basically what they're trying to spin it as. But, as we spent a lot of time doing over the course of the World Cup, I think it's fair to say that you don't become a billionaire in Qatar without being in bed with the government. And there's obviously people a hell of a lot more qualified than me, you, Adam, essentially saying who've reported on this. You've really got to listen to the likes of Miguel Delaney, who's been taking some absolute pelters on Twitter.
Yes.
Adam
Crafton as well. I want to give
Adam
a shout out to.
Crafton, Filippo Clare. There's a good set of journalists out there who've been reporting on state ownership, and I think I also want to go at a lot of Manchester United fans I've seen online. Some of them, I'm not just talking about random people. You're talking people with sometimes hundreds of thousands of followers effectively going, yep, Qatar, we want them in. We don't care about the rest of it. And that's unfortunately we've seen the arguments that people have used to justify, Manchester City fans have used to justify the state ownership. Newcastle fans, I've seen Manchester United fans do it as well. And it's the same old shit every single time. It's what about Twitter being half owned by Saudi? What about this? What about this? What about this? Without actually answering the question. You feel like just turning around and saying, well, why don't you just turn around and say you don't care about, the LGBTQ community, you don't care about women. Everybody knows this, what happened to those migrant workers over the course of the World Cup. And obviously we featured the Cars of Qatar, of which have got numerous examples of injustices. I was even reading The Guardian today, an instance where a gentleman who was advising people on how to try and get some money, wages that are earned. He's, after the World Cup, been thrown in jail, for a sham trial. And it's just, I think I'm against state ownership in any way, shape or form. And I think a lot of people are trying to say, oh, it's just because you don't want, trying to put racism involved in it. But I'm sorry, but if Joe Biden woke up tomorrow morning and went, I want to buy a Man United, I would be just as weirded out. If you think about it that way, it's like Rishi Sunak. I think he's a Southampton fan. Imagine him waking up tomorrow morning and go, you know what? As part of my private interest, I'm going to buy Southampton.
That is a massive point. He could definitely afford it, though. He could definitely afford it.
But when you put it in that, if you were to say that, like about our government doing the same thing, you think, well, that's bloody ridiculous. But because it's elsewhere, it seems to be acceptable. And I think it's just been disappointing from a personal point of view, saying, we've laughed at Manchester City and Newcastle and all of that kind of stuff for years and years and years. And yet you're seeing a lot of people, with big followings and things like that, effectively do exactly the same thing. And I just don't, as a supporter, I don't want to see my club just become another oil state. There seems to be a line spun that, it's only the Qataris or whoever who has the money to invest in what the club needs. And all right, there is big investment needed. You've got a ground that needs a bit of TLC. You've got a training ground that needs updating. You've got a whole infrastructure which has probably been neglected for the 17 years the Glazers are there. But that can be done, organically.
Plenty of other Premier League clubs are managing to do it without state ownership. Liverpool are doing it. Arsenal are doing it. Like, it's possible. I think the one thing that disappointed me with, now, obviously, I don't like Manchester United, right? But what I've always had towards Manchester United is a massive level of respect, because the club has principles, and it always has had principles, even going down to there being a youth product in the team every match since 1931 or whatever it is. Like, that club has always had principles. It's always been about working people. Like, Alex Ferguson definitely imprinted that into the club as well. And what I don't like is for for United fans, surely they must know that the club has these principles. That's part of the reason why they love the club. Like, it's part of the reason why I love Arsenal, because we have this class about us that I think, and we have these certain rules that we follow. And United have the same thing. And I think for all the fans to, or not all the fans, for a lot of fans to just turn around and go, nah, sod that. We want the brand new shiny money. It's just really, really, it's sad, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're seeing a little bit with I think what we're seeing is a bit of a difference between the fan base. So there is the match going for the fan base. So the Athletic, as an example, did a poll for their subscribers about who they want to take over as the new owners, and I think about 71% of that vote was in the direction of Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Now, you would suspect that the sample includes paying subscribers who are, maybe more match-going fans or more local-based, given where the publication is. And the view, and I feel like the view of the match-going fans, and maybe the ones based over here primarily, seem to feel that, keeping it local. We don't want to go into that state ownership model. Now, I think we have to remember that Manchester United, a bit like Liverpool, and unlike Manchester City, without wanting to make an unnecessary dig, I think it is worth pointing out where Manchester City were as a football club going back in 2008, with a very localized, passionate, big, but very, very localized support. They only had to win over one set of fans, basically. Whereas with Manchester United, you've got millions upon millions of fans all over the world. And I think it's probably worth mentioning that there's millions of fans who, don't care. To put it frankly, they do not care about the human rights and that side of it. All they want is they want to see their clubs win trophies, and anything else aside from that is just not important to them. And I think that's a lot of the voices that you're hearing on the seeing on the internet at the moment. I think it's a lot of it's not to say there's also UK based YouTube channels and fan channels giving it, the Qatar's the only way forward. I think it's just very disappointing. And my girlfriend actually pulled me up on an awkward question. She says, well, what do you do if that Qatar takeover goes through? Because obviously she's heard me rant about Qatar and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that is a very awkward question that I
need to think about that one.
Genuinely, that is a very awkward question I do not have the answer to.
Sorry,
I'm just going to quickly ask a question. I don't know if Andy knows this, but I saw a tweet that said Jim Radcliffe's bid was to essentially buy out all of the Glazers' share in the club. Do you know if the Qatar bids have similar stances, or is it a proportion that gives Glazers a share in the club as well?
No, so the club is 79 point something percent owned by the Glazers. So technically speaking, the Glazers don't own all of the club as it is. There's also, but they own all the shares
majority,
they own the majority of the shares, and they also own the shares of the greater voting power. There's a different class of shares, basically. So effectively, the shares, in terms of voting power and influence, the shares, the other 20% is effectively worthless.
Of
you buy it because you're a supporter. So both bids are essentially to buy out the Glazers portion. And I guess the other side of it is there's 5 Glazer siblings that have spawned. So, and, what complicates it a little bit further is that Joel and Avram, who are the ones who've been more involved in the running of the club, they're apparently, I don't know how true this is, less reluctant to sell on that scenario, which might be driving up the price, whereas the other 3 siblings kind of want to be done with it, basically. So it's not... That's basically how that bid's going to work. I think there's also been the question of how the debt that the Glazers, provided. Manchester United is a welcome present. Now, the Qatari bid have understandably they've come out big and they've said we'll clear the debt, we're going to invest in this, we're going to invest in that. Whereas the understanding of the Jim Ratcliffe bid is that the debt won't be gone overnight as such. It'll essentially be transferred from Manchester United over to the Ineos group as a whole, and will become the responsibility of the Ineos group as opposed to Manchester United directly.
So doing the opposite of what the Glazers did, taking personal debt and putting it against the club.
How that will impact Manchester United we don't know, because they could in theory still choose to take money from the club to service that, or maybe pay a portion of it. So I don't know how that's going to work. Like I said, I'm sure Sir Jim Ratcliffe knows, but I don't. But that's the understanding of where that bid is. So yeah, from my personal point of view, like I would want to see someone like Jim Ratcliffe, who, you know, he's a local lad. He's all right. I mean, he's a billionaire, so he's probably done some dodgy shit in the past. Let's be honest.
They all
so,
have.
You know, I'm not saying he's like the Angel of the North or anything like that, but he's also got sporting. He's also got like a sporting background with a very sports team that he's owned, and I think I feel like there'd be a return to being the club being run in a sustainable way. And like I said, Manchester United don't need a nation state money. We don't. We're perfectly capable, even through while the Glazers have taken £1 billion out of the club, Manchester United have still spent that kind of money on transfer fees since Fergie have left, albeit a lot of it badly.
But the money's still been there. The money's still been there.
The money's still been there. I think all it needs is just competent management, a proper footballing structure in place, and that alone will be enough to see Manchester United back to where they I think should be. Probably sounds arrogant, but
no, but it's where they should be, and it is where they should be. Really, it's where they should be. But it sounds like it's going to rumble on. We're going to have to go actually to the main show there. But Andy, that was great. Really feel like I know a lot more about it now. So listeners, we are going to go for a very quick break, and we will be back for some Serie A action right after. Oh wait, I need the video. Right after this. And here we are. It's the Serie A section, and we are going to start. There's only one place to start. We are up in Bergamo, and my question is, Baroni, manager of the season, as he guides Lecce to a 2-1 win in Bergamo and leaves the Salentini all the way up in, where are they, 13th place in their first season back in the Premier League, and a full 10 points above the relegation zone. They've now got one of the best defenses in the league. They don't score many, but they do not concede many. But they got 2 against Atalanta. The second one in particular was incredibly soft. We need to talk about Atalanta's defending. But Adam, what have you made about Lecce so far this season? And Baroni, who's been incredible.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And again, different players on the score sheet this time round for Lecce. But yeah, as you allude to, very soft second goal. But the first one by Cisse was an incredible hit from distance as well. You have to question what the Atalanta goalkeeper was doing there. But generally, it just didn't seem like Atalanta were there at the races. I know they kind of put a bit more pressure towards the second half, and Højlund, and Lookman didn't really seem like they were comfortable. That said, Falcone made some incredible saves during the course of this match. And when I was looking at the match, I was kind of like, why is this guy not at a bigger club? And then he reminds me on the 87th minute when Højlund charges down a kind of kick. It lands in the back of the net, but then he pulls off an amazing save for Muriel as well. So he redeems himself in that sense. As for Baroni, I mean, I was looking through his history. He's had quite a few clubs, it has to be said, and he seems like he's got a bit more settled in recent times. Obviously, Regina, where he then got the move towards Lecce and got them promoted from Serie B. It's an incredible pathway, and the fact is, I think there was a stat a few weeks ago that said of the top 5 that he's taken points pretty much off every single club now. And now, obviously, Atalanta, a second time, he's got 3 points there as well. And I've got the same question here as well. But just to kind of answer your question, I think he's just behind Spalletti for.
Yeah, it's going to be Spalletti, isn't it?
Unfortunately. But if he wasn't there, then, incredibly, he would definitely be the coach of the year.
It's going to be Spalletti, of course it is. But I think what I really like now, Baroni, his playing career was fascinating as well. He played with Maradona in the Napoli team. He scored the goal to seal the Scudetto in the 90 season. I think he scored the goal to win the title. So really fascinating career. But what I love about his team, and I thought what they did really well this game, because we've seen like Atalanta, they're very direct, but they tend to be through the middle, right? Yeah. They tend to be like Højlund running through the middle, like bursts through the center of the field. Exactly. And what Lecce do is force everyone out wide. They're so super compact with that 4-5-1 that Atalanta just could not break through them. I think Umtiti has been, when they signed him, I was like, that is a very clever signing because he's still a very good player. He obviously had a lot of issues at Barcelona, as a lot of other players did. But what he's found is a team that's going to give him 90 minutes every week as long as he's fit. There's not the pressure that was on him at Barcelona. And he's able to be this ball-playing defender and make these charging runs out of the back. Him and Bashirotto are great at it. At the right moment, they'll just push out defense and provide extra pressure in the midfield, and they just kill attacks. And I thought they were just they were really, like, their press and their organization is incredible. And then they've got people up front who are able to take chances. So people like Stefetza, who we've talked about. Now, Lecce really haven't scored many goals, right?
No.
But what they've done is you don't need to. If it's the old school Italian, like Serie A in the 90s, we'll win 1-0. Like, if you know what I mean, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
But I think tactically, they're just fantastic. And they're the youngest average squad in Serie A. So they do have the youngest age. I just think they're absolutely crushing it. So it's great to see. But Andy, I'm going to ask you about Atalanta. The defending on that the corner for the second one, I think the dummies on the training pitch might have moved more than the defenders for that one.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I thought COVID was still in place because there was lots of social distancing in place. I mean, I think it's one of those, like, you know, you can just imagine that you sat there at the half time going, right, lads, make sure you pick up your man in the corner. You've practiced drills probably, you know, for at least a few hours during the week. You know, you mark this person, you mark this person. It's basics, isn't it? Like, even when you're playing at like 7-a-side, it's like everyone get a man.
He's yours.
Yeah, exactly. But unfortunately, the Atalanta side decided that for Blint, nobody was the man. No. So he just had a free header on goal. And I mean, they brought that on themselves, to be honest. I think you know, it was a bit of like a Football Manager scoreline where, although Atalanta had a lot of chances, they just didn't feel like they created many good enough quality ones to be able to score, really. I think they've been a little bit like that all season. They've had lapses of concentration, I think, is what's I'm doing at Atalanta at the moment. You know, even for the first goal, there was a bit of from Cisse. It's just felt like, he's not going to shoot from there. It'll be fine. Yeah, and then he did.
And it wasn't.
And it wasn't fine. I mean, even the goalkeeper seemed a little bit surprised by it. They just seem to get themselves caught out a lot. Like I said, you know, I don't think Atalanta are in any sort of serious trouble this season, but I think it is their defense is what's stopping them from being able to really push for those top 4 positions, because it's still very much open for them, but they just need to sort it out, really.
It has put a bit of a tiny dent. They're now on 41 points in 6th place, and they're 3 points behind Milan, who are in 4th. Like Andy kind of touched on, like in their last 5, they've lost 2, drawn 1, and won 2. So it's definitely like just flip a coin to see what they're going to do today. But what I found really mad was the fact that their midfield was so easy to run through. Like, I think Cup Miners was a player that I was really excited about. And I think this season his level has dropped a bit. And it felt like he wasn't really able to get those tackles in and stop the ball coming through. It felt like every time Lecce did get the ball and go on an attack, they just walked through. Like on the transition, Atalanta were absolutely all over the place. Like, Adam, what did you make of their performance?
I think it is, like you say, it's just you don't know which Atalanta side does turn up. And like to your point about Cup Miners, I think it's since the World Cup that he's kind of dropped off, because if you remember, him and Pasalic were doing really well for Atalanta, and suddenly it's just not been the same side. I'm just trying to think, when was the last time we saw Arun as well play in the middle of the park? Because like it's been a while. I appreciate he's a different type of player, but obviously it seems like what's it called, Gianpiero Gasparini's like fancying a more attacking midfield, because he's completely gone away from the pragmatic style that kind of won them games at the first part of the season, and he's gone back to old Atalanta almost. So
which is great at times.
Yes, it's great aesthetically, but not great if you're an Atalanta fan, I'm sure. So I'm sure they just want results. And this is the thing, I think when I was looking at the table last, and I have to bring it up, but I think Juve seem like they're closer at getting to that spot now than they ever have. So yeah,
They are
it's mad
currently
to see how close they are.
9 points behind Atalanta. It is not insurmountable. It definitely is not insurmountable. So we've said it before, Juve are always on the horizon. They're never fully there.
Yeah.
They're like in the film when
It's
you
like that
didn't kill,
sunset, isn't it?
yeah, like in the film when you didn't kill the bad guy, right? You missed your chance. You should have
It
killed him
gets
the
up
third
again,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, like they're just always.
I mean,
there.
hopefully the Italian prosecutors might finish that shot off.
They won't miss.
Well,
They
it'd be
won't
quite-
miss this.
You know
time.
what, actually, I kind of want Juve to go on a barnstorming run where they win 50, 16 games in a row and they just get relegated anyway.
Oh, good try though. Good try. Good try.
Yeah, goodbye.
But we have to tip our hat to Lecce and say what an unbelievable result for them. They're having a great season, and another team that's come up from Serie B, and it's happening more now in Serie A, that are coming up and establishing themselves. Hopefully, next season, all they need to do is build on that attack and get you've got the defense, because all they did in the summer was buy defenders. Shock. What they need to do next summer is go out and buy some attackers.
There's
and
some big
build
news
on
coming through Serie A live. So Torino are playing Cremonese, who they've never really gained in their entire life, but they have equalised against Torino away from home, literally about 3 minutes ago.
It could happen. It would be very Torino for that to happen.
Maybe we could see history live on the pod.
We will announce it if it happens, but that would be very Torino for them to be the first team to lose to Cremonese. That would be very Torino. We do need to move on from Lecce, and we're going to go to. It was an unhappy visit for Silvio as his old team came to visit his new home and Milan win 1-0. Now, this is a big result for Milan. This is a ground where not many teams have won. We talked about it on Thursday, where this has been, I think, Juve lost here, right? I think Inter struggled there. Like, a lot of teams have not done well at that ground. But Junior Messias, who's been coming in for a bit of stick from the Milan fans, played back in his attacking midfielder role, gets the goal and gets the win for Milan. Now, this is huge. Adam, what did you make of this result? Were you surprised? I was a little bit surprised.
Surprised in terms of the style as well, because I think Milan really turned it on in the first half. They were quite solid. Tonali and Krunic in particular seemed to control that midfield. And we were talking about the credentials of Monza, especially with Palladino, and it didn't seem like we saw that in the first half. It seemed like Milan was the Milan that we're used to seeing in past games. Like previously, they've obviously not had a great run of late, but it almost feels like that Champions League match against Spurs has really spurred them on, creating that kind of momentum. And believe it or not, that was probably the result that they needed, something like that to get a win under the board. And Leao, again, it looks like we were seeing the better Leao than we have been of recent times. But that said, obviously, Monza had to rely on De Gregorio as well in goal. I mean, he had to pull off some incredible saves as well just to keep the scoreline down to 1-0. In the second half, Carrera has also had a shot with Tatarasano coming off his back, and then I think it was post and his back before it went off for corner. So, it was just kind of lucky, I suppose, to an extent, if you compare it to Martinez against Arsenal.
The gods weren't shining on them like in Villa Park.
It was similar vibes, that's for sure. So Monza did play better in the second half, but I think it was well-deserved result in the end for Milan, and probably helps them out because they've got a tough run as well, I believe. They've got Atalanta, I believe, next. So that could be a very tasty game in Bergamo as well. So, and then I think followed by that, you've got Spurs' second match. And then I want to say Fiorentina at home as well. So, it's going to be quite important for their league campaign anyway. That's for sure.
Got a bit of a tough run. They've got, as you said, Atalanta at home. They've got Fiorentina away, the second leg of Spurs, but then they've got Salernitana, so don't worry, you'll be fine. But yes, I think a huge win for Milan, and this does put them back in kind of control, of their European destiny. They are on 44 points alongside Roma and still 3 points behind Inter, who did manage to get a win. slightly fortuitous, I think, even though it was 3-1, but they did manage to get a win. So Milan, that was a huge win with teams around them all winning apart from Atalanta. But the next game we need to go on to, and I'm quite excited to talk about this, even though the game was utterly terrible and absolutely woeful. Solbakken or Goalbakken gets his goal and is one of the few shining lights as Roma beat Verona 1-0. Now, Verona have been really turned around by their new manager, really starting to get a bit of a run together, and they put in a proper performance here against Roma. Now, Roma had a really shuffled team after Europe. There was quite a stacked bench. Like Dybala wasn't playing. Yep. Tammy Abraham had to go off. Matic wasn't playing. There was a lot of change in personnel. But what I think we saw from Roma here was that they've got a bit of strength in depth and they can just grind wins out, because I'm going to say they didn't really deserve this one. But they had that quality from Solbakken and they just saw it out. I think towards the end, it was proper trench warfare, back to the wall stuff, and it was classic Mourinho.
That's a special though, isn't it? Trench warfare,
absolutely,
get it done.
Absolutely, and the biggest headline was Karsdorp was back in the team. The man who was very much thrown into the sea by Mourinho was thrown back into the team, as he needs to be able to cycle this squad around. But Adam, I'll go to you first, then Andy. What did you think of this Roma performance? They are quietly putting a pretty good season together. This is another win without conceding at home.
Yeah, it's important that they got a clean sheet. As you allude to, they did rotate the squads. Zalewski didn't start for this match either. And as you say, Dybala, I think that's the interesting one. So that's the third injury that he's had this season already. So there's kind of unknowns around whether he's going to make it for the Europa game against Salzburg. But yeah, that didn't look like a great injury for Tammy Abraham as well.
That was a rough one. Yeah,
that's quite a rough corner, to be fair, because all I saw was bodies on the floor. It's just like
everybody everywhere
on the floor.
It was just like another world war, basically. But yeah, kudos to Ola Solbakken. I think that's a bit of a quiet bit of business that Mourinho's kind of got away with, and he looks incredible. 3 games in, and the touches he had was quite unknown. For him to come from the Norwegian league, which we know has got kind of a bit of a reputation of building these kind of players up now. And he slotted in really nicely. And I've got an interesting stat for you guys. I want you to guess on this. So he's the 3rd Norwegian to score for Roma. Can you name the other 2?
God.
And these players, that's one. I was going to say, in the last 20 years, these players have been about. So it's not old.
Risa, and I can't think of another Norwegian. No, Littmanen never played. He wasn't Norwegian, was he?
He's finished.
I'll give you a clue. It's striker.
Good Johnson?
No. John Carew.
Carew. I forgot he was there.
Yeah. I forgot he was good once.
He was very good once. I remember there was a Football Manager where if you had him on corners, he scored. Basically, a corner was like a penalty. He just scored every single time. Yes, I got a corner. He scored every single time. What a guy. Love John Carew. I thought Solbakken was fantastic. And another player I wanted to kind of shout out as well was Bove in midfield. Roma youth product, was just absolutely everywhere. And I know Roma fans have a fairly, I don't know, they seem stupidly harsh on him because he's not Totti or De Rossi. I don't know, they seem to not like him. But I thought he was really, really good and he was everywhere and he kind of showed a bit of fight, a bit of technical ability. And he's kind of this season, he's becoming a bit of a breakout star in that team. I think Mourinho can see something in him. And then another one, I was just reminded that Mancini is an absolute bell end. He's just... Oh my God, he's such a prick. He's such a prick. He was shouting in the face of one of the Verona players, right? And then it just reminded me, there's a video of him full-on punching Afena-Jean in the Conference League.
In the final. It was
just weird. Every video you see from the bloke, he looks like a prize bell end. And I was just reminded of it yesterday. I was like, oh God, he's such a hateable player. But Andy, Roma this year, they're finding themselves firmly in the Champions League battle. They're up there, 44 points level with Milan and Inter. Do you think they'll get the Champions League? Mourinho needs to deliver them Champions League. We need him back in the big time, right?
It feels like the Mourinho cycle is kind of sorting itself out, to be fair. Like, he always tends to have a good, well, unless it's Tottenham Hotspur, because it's Tottenham Hotspur. But even at other clubs, including at Manchester United, he won a trophy in his first season, got a second the following year, and it's not completely out of the question he could do something similar with Roma. And I think they are a club that does expect to be competing for Champions League positions week in, week out, and that's what ultimately was brought in to do. And I think this is his best chance, with Juve more or less out the picture, and Milan and Lazio and Atalanta being very inconsistent. He's very, very good at just not being shit. I know it sounds simple, but he did it at Chelsea as well. He's just able to put together those 1-0s, 2-1s, those hard fought wins. I guess it's always about what he does in the following season and what Roma could do as a club to push themselves further, because as we've seen over the years, they've had a few false dawns, should we say, where every time, even with the likes of Peak De Rossi and Nangolan and players like that they've had in the past, but today there's still Francesco Totti still playing. They always look like to one or two players away from having a proper squad together, then they don't make the correct investment choices, or the manager can't continue momentum. We've seen it over the years, with a few managers. So it'll be interesting to see if they can continue it. But I think would I back them to finish in the top 4 this season? Yeah, absolutely.
I hope so. I really hope Mourinho gets them back in the big time. I really do. I think they've not been exciting to watch, and there's a lot of Roma fans complaining, but it's been a lot better than anything Roma have had in the last couple of years in terms of getting points on the board. So I think pick your battles and take the wins when you get them, to be honest. But we need to move on, and just very quickly, because it's just every week now. Kvara scores, Osimhen scores, Napoli win. Anything else to say about it, boys? It is ridiculous how easy they're making this league look. That Kvara goal was genuinely Maradona-esque.
It was. There's nothing more you can say, because even Spalletti's rotating the squads, leaving out big players like the lights. I was just looking at who he left out. So Rui, Zielinski, and Lozano, and then he still had Politano, Elmas, and Oliveira still on, and they still created that. And as we've all been purring, that Osimhen goal. I mean, even the Kvara goal in itself was great. And Sassuolo weren't even that terrible. Llorente had a chance, Defre had a chance, and then Raspadori was ruled out for this match. So again, is there kind of murmurs of his injury coming to play? But they're so strong at the moment. I think they're trying to put off this kind of echelons of these claims of them being Champions League winners, because they don't want the momentum to kind of be ruined at this moment in time. So I think the fact that they've built such a points tally at this moment in time, it just looks like it's going to be theirs at this moment in time. But as I said, I think it's going to be, we're looking at the end of April before we can confirm it definitely going to Napoli.
There are still a lot of nervous people in Naples. Don't worry. There are still a lot of them. There is. Because they know that if it doesn't happen, it's going to be fucking embarrassing. They are still very, very nervous. But Napoli roll on. That Osimhen goal, I feel like the Consigli got a bit of stick for it, and I was like, there's no way he thought he was going to shoot from that angle. There's no way. And he just rockets it past him.
It was a bit like the Seamus Coleman goal for Everton.
Yes.
The weekend, very similar. Like and as a keeper, you would be like, going to hit it from there, is it? Oh shit! Before you realise,
I did feel Melier was a bit more towards his 6-yard box than the Sassuolo goalkeeper. But
so it's but that I thought with Napoli, they could have had 5 or 6 easily. Osimhen, he scored once, but he probably had 3 or 4 easier chances. Well, easier in inverted commas, but easier chances to probably bag a hat trick on another day.
They've now scored 56 goals in 23 games. They've only conceded 15. Their goal difference is 41. And I'm not even going to count how many games they've won in a row now. They're just winning all of them. So Napoli, just incredible, incredible stuff. But very quickly, before we do head off to the Premier League and a break, I want to very quickly say, is Orsolini's form enough to get him a call-up in the next national squad? Adam, I know you wanted to talk about this.
Yeah, I do, because obviously we've been talking up his credentials last few weeks for Bologna in terms of his start.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the goal that he scored against Sampdoria, and it's a breakaway kind of chance, he kind of comes in on his left foot and shoots in. It was an incredible hit. And Orsolini just seems to be really pulling it up this season in particular. I mean, he can do it from the penalty spot. He seems a bit like he can do it from set pieces. He just looks really like someone that can slot in and do almost what Insigne did for Italy. I feel he's that kind of player, and I know he's got a bit of previous, but again, I do feel like he can easily do a job for Mancini, even if it is just one campaign or just coming off the bench, for example. I think, you've got a really exciting Italy national squad. It's just a case of getting them to play together. It seems that seems to be the issue at the moment, because you think about going into the next championship, I'd be really talking up about Italy's chances. Yeah. You think about the players we've talked about, even in the Prem, for example, Noto as well. Like, you got to somehow find a place for him as well at some point.
They just need to be asked with games that aren't major tournaments. That's what it is. Because every time you see Italy in friendlies and qualifiers, they just give off this. Oh, we can't be asked. We just want to get to the real thing and forget they actually have to qualify for it. Because once they're at major tournaments, they go up a gear.
Mate, it's the same with the supporters. Nobody here watches qualifiers or friendlies. They're like, I'm not watching that. I'm only watching the tournament. You're like, you've got to play them,
While we're on the theme of the Italy national squad, did you see Chiellini doing his kind of turn for LA FC? He did this Dan-esque turn, which everyone in the crowd went, ooh, like that, basically. It was hilarious seeing this 38-year-old period around these American defenders. It was joy.
That's MLS for you in one hit, isn't it?
Brilliant. Well, I just want to very quickly say, Orsolini in his last 4 games has got 3 goals and 2 assists. He's absolutely killing it. And that goal was an absolute rocket as well. Thiago Motta quietly doing a very good job in Bologna after kind of not like flat, underwhelming in Spezia, I'm going to say. He's doing very, very well at Bologna, so very good to see that. But guys, we are going to leave Serie A there for now, and we are going to go to the Premier League right after this. And here we are. It's Premier League time, and we need to start in one place. I'm going to insist we're starting at Villa Park. And the reason we're starting at Villa Park is because on Saturday, I'm sat having lunch with my lovely girlfriend. Arsenal are currently 2-1 down, and I get a message from Andy going, typical February bottle job. Arsenal bottling it. And I was trying to be like, obviously, the girlfriend could tell that something had happened, so I'd gone very quiet. And then Arsenal equalised, and I just replied to Andy, suck a fat one, because I was massively ready for us to get this. Now, what happened was we were going to the Egyptian Museum, right? And the whole thing is underground, right? So the game is like 89th minute, and we've got to go in because we've booked the museum. And I was like, right, okay, yeah, we're going in. As I'm going in, my signal dies, but I just get a message from my cousin saying winner, but I don't know who it's for, right? So I'm in this crypt, and I have to run out of the museum, run up the stairs, and I see these 2 guards that are like checking tickets, and I'm like, Calcio, like pointing at my phone, like, I'll be 2 minutes, ran out of the door to get signal, to get the messages at like 3-2-4-2, celebrated to myself, and then ran back into the museum as everyone was looking at me. I ended up running down the escalator that was going up. So people were like full on staring at me. But it was worth it because we got the win. And bloody hell, this week has been I literally messaged my cousin earlier during the game, like, this season's done. Just call it. We're out. Like, as long as we finish above United, I don't care. Let's just like see it off. And then within 40 minutes, it's back on, boys. And I can't believe it. How do we keep doing this? I think Villa we were shocking defensively first off. Those first 2 goals, we were piss poor. Like, Saliba absolutely stacks it on the first goal. So does Ben White. The second goal, no one gets near Coutinho. We were far too open, just piss poor first off. Saka, the only player, again, who's able to step up and just drag us into a game. Great volley, by the way. Like, that was an unbelievable hit, the way he hits that. But whatever Arteta said second half, completely turned it round. Zinchenko getting his first ever Premier League goal. Jorginho bouncing it in off Martinez's head. And then Martinez going up and ended up conceding a goal. And Martinelli conceding, celebrating before he scores a goal. Everything about it was so delicious. And even afterwards, like the piss boiling that Arteta has been doing with his thing with the referee and everyone getting wound up about him. I just love him. I absolutely love him. If it was Mourinho, people would be calling it charming, but because it's Arteta, people fucking hate it. It's brilliant. But that win without the emotion is absolutely massive, because if we'd have lost that game, I think the whole season derails. I think genuinely I'd have been looking at going, okay, are we going to end up getting Conference League here? Because like I feel like this season really would have only gone one way. But a moment like that and a performance like that properly turns it around. Helped by Chris Wood, of course. Thank you, Chris Wood. Eternally grateful. But I'm going to go to Andy first. You can have a bit of humble pie. How did it feel to watch Arsenal turn that around?
Oh, man. No, to be fair, like, you guys deserved it. I think I hit the send button on WhatsApp a little bit too soon. I should have just
prematurely.
Yeah, I was definitely a bit premature with that one. I thought, oh, here we go. But then again, you know, I'm used to Arsenal. It's not like it's come out of nowhere. We're used to Arsenal doing this every single year since about 2006. You know, it did feel like all the fixtures are piling up. They've lost a couple of games recently. They've gone 2-1 down. Like, you could sort of see it happening, but as well as me having to eat some humble pie, fair enough. See Martinez having to eat humble pie because that was fantastic. Because let's be honest, like, he's been winding everybody up recently. You know, he's a shit ass when it comes to penalties, and you know, he's marketed himself as being a World Cup winning shithouse, and he's very much proud of it. And he tries giving it the you know, the big dick energy, but to get humbled by Jorginho first of all, by the ball coming back off the bar, hitting him on the back of the head, and then going in the net. If that isn't embarrassing enough, he's you know, he's gone up for a corner. Think he's going to do something. Been humbled again, caught on the counter, nowhere near the ball, and I think well, Emery said after the game he wasn't particularly happy at all.
The way he full on called him out.
Yeah, I mean, fuck me. I wouldn't be surprised if he's dropped for the next game. It felt like that bad. I felt like it's like, come on, mate. You can't, just because you won a World Cup, you can't just go out there doing what you want. And at the end of the day, there's a reason why he's playing for Aston Villa and not Arsenal.
I think these are the, like, it often comes down to personality and to like your mental kind of where you are mentally, and you have to ask why Wenger never ever played him. Like, never played him, kept sending him out alone. Unbelievable goalkeeper, but like you said, if you're going to spend your entire career shithousing, you have to be able to take it when people shithouse you back. And I think Martinelli doing the cheeky little celebration before it went in, seeing Stan Collymore getting so angry about it. Oh, it's all so lovely. It's all so lovely. But Adam, what do you think this means for the title race? City do drop points. They've not been able to win 3 games in a row all season. Arsenal have won 5 in a row once and 4 in a row twice. Do we think Arsenal are just more consistent than City at this point? Is that the difference?
I don't know, because if you think about how that momentum was going up to that game, I think there was a certain twist that happens, especially when they beat you at the Emirates. And I think this result psychologically at the time, because if you think about it, it was an early kickoff. Had Arsenal drawn or lost, potentially Man City go into the Forest game a bit more relaxed, potentially not necessarily trying to get a result as they were. And I think that maybe changes the dynamic. As I said on Thursday, I still think there's a lot of twists and turns in this kind of title race.
I can't take it.
And I think the fact that Man City are still in the Champions League, they're going to be wanting to get that, I think, more so than the title. Don't get me wrong, they'll want the title as well. But I think if there's a choice, they'll probably want the Champions League more so. And the fact that you've got Man United putting a bit more pressure as well, I think they're playing some really good stuff. Credits to Ten Hag, what he's doing. I think there's still a room where they can be, and I think it was shown in that Leicester game, there's elements where they seem to be dragged on that left-hand side in particular, where they were exposed a few times by Leicester players. And the fact that if it takes one, like maybe sending off, I think it's a bit that should have been sent off, etc., then I think that changes that complexity. But back to Arsenal and Man City, I think it's going to twist and turn between the results as well. But I think Arsenal might have a bit more momentum now going forward, because I think that really helps them out. It means they've battled through this kind of period. Now they have to win the next game. I think that's the most important thing, is what happens with the next game. But yeah, I think, Man City are still there. They're
still not far. They're still not far.
Yeah,
Our
exactly.
game in hand is against Everton, of course, who beat us, and we do have Leicester next. So 2 games, in theory, touch wood, touch all the wood, that we should be winning, but we will see how we do. Just a huge win. I really, really enjoyed it. Fabio Vieira's pass for Martinelli was fantastic. Ødegaard, after missing the open goal, stepped up and was unbelievable. I just think there's a lot of character in that team. I do want to see Kieran Tierney a bit more, though. I do. I love Zinchenko, but I want to see Tierney as another option. I think off the bench, he could really do something for us as well. But we're going to leave Arsenal there at the top of the table, 2 points clear, and we're going to go down or up to Old Trafford, where Marcus Rashford scores again. Nobody can stop him. What has Ten Hag done to Rashford, Andy?
I think it's just giving him a bit of confidence.
And Benny McCarthy, sorry. And Benny McCarthy.
Benny McCarthy, yeah. But no, I think there's always that level of talent within Marcus Rashford. I think over the past 18 months going into the season, he picked up quite a bad back injury, was probably rushed back and overplayed for Manchester United on quite a few occasions. Last season, the season before that, he had a very, he had obviously returns of the Euros, missed a penalty. So he had a very rough 12 to 18 months, probably both for the personal level and both for the footballing level as well. And I think, given what was going on at Manchester United last season, there didn't seem to be much care from the club to what was going on there. And I think what Ten Hag's been able to do is come in, put an arm around the shoulder of players who've gone, look, you've got the potential to be a lot better. You've seen it the way that he handled the Jadon Sancho situation. He's actually gone, you know what, take a few months, do what you need to do to come back. And you'll be fine. And I think with Rashford, he needs to be the main guy. I think he needs to be told, even if he's not necessarily starting up front, he needs to know he's starting week in, week out in more or less the same position. And I think what you're seeing is his ability come through, but with confidence. He's definitely, he's put together consistent running games. He's fit. And when he's running at the ball with you, there's only a handful of players which are as good as he has as running the ball with speed. You look at Mbappe as an example. I'm not comparing the two players, because unless he does that season in, season out, you can't. But over years, you see the likes of Ryan Robben, what he's going to do, but he's direct. You know what he's going to do. You just can't do anything to stop it. And he's finishing. Which is probably something that Benny McCarthy has worked on, is a lot more clinical. I mean, he
seems a lot calmer. He just seems a lot calmer in front of goal, right?
The first goal was a classic example of that. Last season, he would have missed that. In fact, I saw him miss easier chances than that, just through hesitation or trying to overthink it. Whereas, this season, he's just picking his spot and just sticking it in.
I get huge mindfulness vibe from his celebration as well. He just closes his eyes, huge, big, deep breath. It's like he's just settling himself. I find it really calming. I reckon he's just centering himself. It's really beautiful to watch. But there's a player we also need to. We've been giving him a bit of stick, but De Gea in the first early kind of period, I'm going to say 10, 20 minutes of that game, Leicester really came at you. De Gea made some massive saves.
We're ropey as shit for the first 20 minutes. It could have been 2 down easily. And James Maddison in the Match of the Day interview afterwards said as much, is that they created plenty of chances. But one thing that De Gea always has been, always will be, is a world-class shot stopper. He has deficiencies in his game in terms of his distribution, but ultimately when we need need him to make a save, he invariably makes them. And he's very unconventional with his saves, making them with feet, with his hands, sliding all over the place. The save from Iniacho was just incredible reflexes. Like 9 times out of 10 that goes in. Yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit. And I think one thing I am looking forward to is seeing what Sabitzer and Casemiro could do in the centre midfield, because
I bet they can both get sent off.
they probably could both get sent off. And you know what? Probably Sabitzer was probably a little bit lucky against Leicester, to be fair. I think had that gone against Manchester United, I probably would have been going like, right, send him off.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look deliberate and it didn't look, too much force, but it was dangerous and above the knee.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you see some bad injuries caused out of it. So, yeah, Leicester probably could feel right to be aggrieved. But yeah, I think Jadon Sancho, I just want to praise how he's come back.
Unbelievable. Yeah,
like
unbelievable.
That third goal was the best pass in football I've seen for Man United in a couple of years. It was just one touch, people running into space, runs off the balls, and you weren't seeing that. And I think Ten Hag deserves a lot of credit because he seems to be turning out results more or less week in, week out. I don't think anybody expected Manchester United to be third in the table in his first season in. And they're pushing. And I think this week's a massive week. If he could come out of this week, with beating Barcelona and winning a trophy on Sunday, that is an awful lot of credit he'll have in the bank.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
But we do. Oh, sorry, Andy. But we do need to talk about Leicester. And Adam, I'm going to go to you for Leicester. Wout Weiss. He's an interesting character. I found him very hard to predict what he was going to do next. I felt like, as you said, Leicester started incredibly brightly, but I think him and Sutar still need to figure out what each other are going to do, right? They got pulled apart so many times. What did you make of Leicester's performance?
I think Leicester just building on that momentum in the last few games. They've been quite confident. I feel like attacking-wise, they are one of the best sides out there when they're at full force. They just need to be a bit more clinical in front of goal, and you can't really argue because any other goalkeeper, I'm sure that goes in. Harvey Barnes, for example, I think it was first 2 minutes of the match, almost scores, and if that goes in, I think the dynamics of the match definitely changes thereafter. But yeah, like you say, it's at the back. They seem to always have this problem. Sionchu was the problem beforehand. Now it's Fairs. But I think the difference is you've got 2 youngish kind of centre backs. They're learning their trade. I think a few games, maybe a few seasons together, they could be a formidable kind of partnership because you've got someone that's kind of strong in Sutar. Face seems a bit more agile to an extent. He likes to put himself out of there as well. But yeah, I mean, Castagna is another one that I really like. I think in the back line, I think he's a really good prospect. I think if he was plucked and put into a Man United team or say even Arsenal, I think he'd do a job. That's the thing. I think he offers you got a really well balanced fullback that kind of defends and also attacks at the same time. So I think considering the season Brendan Rodgers has had at the beginning to what they are delivering right now, I think it's incredible. And I think it just shows you what a bit of patience does. Like, I mean, if you remember at the beginning of the season, everyone wanted him out of that job. I think Leicester City fans are quite happy with him right now. I remember when I
think they're a bit more empathetic. They're a bit more empathetic to the situation, aren't they? They're a bit more like, okay, we know what is happening and why we are where we are.
And don't forget, they did move on a few of the key guards, of the old squads, likes of Kasper Schmeichel now at Nice, for example. I thought they wouldn't recover from that, but they have. Danny Ward, for all his sins, he seems to be doing a few good jobs in matches. It's not all bad. But I'm sure in the summer they'll reinvest some of the money that they've got go again. I think the most important thing is they probably overachieved over the last few seasons. That's probably what it is. That's the thing. So we expect them to be at a certain level, whereas they're probably more likely to be mid-table style club. I mean, it was just one of those. Man United on tune at the moment. They're a form team at the moment, and they're going to win those kind of games. So fair play to Leicester, just a bit more clinical edge, and I think eventually they'll have to replace the likes of Vardy anyway. So let's see who they bring in.
I think the second they didn't score in the first 10, 20 minutes, I was like, okay, United are winning this now. It was vitally important that Leicester got that early goal. They just, as you said, weren't quite able to do it. Guys, there's an update from Torino Cremonese. Cremonese have managed to add 5 minutes to how long they've been ahead in the game. They went 2-1 against Torino in the 74th minute through Valeri, but then Singo equalized in the 79th. So they've thrown it away again, but they do have 5 more minutes where they've been in the lead in Serie A. So, not all is lost. We do need to go on, not yet anyway, we do need to go on in the Premier League. There's still a few minutes left. And we need to talk about, now we talked about this game. We said it was going to be a thriller. It was a 1-0 as Brighton lost 1-0 at home to Marco Silva's Fulham. And we've talked about Baroni manager of the season. Is Marco Silva, or should Marco Silva, be an outside shout for manager of the season? Freshly promoted into the Premier League, and Fulham now find themselves all the way up in 6th on 38 points. They've won 11, drawn 5, lost 8. They're only 3 points off Newcastle in 5th. Like, they have a real shout of getting Europe this year. Andy, how surprised have you been by Fulham? I honestly didn't even think they'd be anywhere near this.
No, nor did I. I thought, a bit like with Bournemouth, especially, they'll be scrapping it out at the bottom of the table. They didn't go as absolutely mental as they had in the previous transfer windows, but plus with Marcus Silva as well, he didn't have a particularly got Hull relegated. He didn't have a particularly great time with it at Everton, but he seems to have found a club and a group of players that suit how he wants to play. And I think it's also worth pointing out he's adapted his own style as well. I mean, you've got Tim Ream, who's hardly a spring chicken. Yeah, he's playing every week and putting in great performances.
He's having a class season.
Yeah, he's having a proper sort of Indian summer, as they call it. I always thought Tim Ream was at best championship level, and I thought you can't be staying in the Premier League with him as your centre back and captain. But to be fair, they've got a few players, like Willian, like Andres Pereira, like Tim Ream.
Willian has run more than I saw him run the entire time at Arsenal. I cannot believe this is the same player.
Exactly. It feels like they've got, he's been able to get a little bit more out of probably players who are unwanted elsewhere. Harrison Reed was another one who didn't get a look in at Southampton, and yet they could probably do with him in the centre of midfield at the moment. But no, I think with Leno as well, all right. He wasn't what Arsenal needed, but certainly for Fulham, he's been fantastic.
He's an international level goalkeeper who, like, when we sold him, I was like, we could have got way more money for him. We could have got so much more money for him. He's a great keeper. And I think also Palhinha in midfield has just been one of the signings of the season. Like, a fantastic player. And they've built a hell of a squad there.
And obviously the goal scorer, Solomon, who they bought at the end of the January transfer window, he looks a player. Really composed finish, especially right at the death as well. I think he's certainly up there for manager of the year, most certainly. And I think Brighton probably dropped a few points they probably didn't expect to in recent weeks. So maybe a bit of reality setting in for De Zerbi's lot, but no, I think for them very much deserving of where they are at the moment.
Nice. And Adam, for Brighton, a little bit of a disappointing one. As Andy says, kind of form dipped a little bit recently. I suppose this is their first loss in 5 games, right? One drawn. Now they've lost. But they're still not a million. They've got 2 games in hand on Fulham. So they still are definitely involved in this European run, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you could see how the frustration got to De Zerbi. The fact that he got sent off in the tunnel as opposed to being on the pitch itself. He definitely got frustrated with this particular match. But you know what? Yeah, I think if you would have given Brighton fans or even Fulham fans the place that they are in right now, I think they would have taken it at the beginning of the season. Because certainly for me, just a hands up, I had Fulham relegated this season. I didn't think they would do what they've done this season. So full kudos to Silva. I didn't think he would do the job that he's done, because if you remember his previous exchanges with Watford, Hull and Everton didn't look this way. They didn't certainly play in this manner. I think he's learned a lot in that time. It has to be said. I think he's become a bit more grounded, pragmatic, but also playing the right style of football that probably Fulham fans want to see. And he's getting the best out of these kind of players that Andy alludes to. It's incredible. You think some of these players have been plucked out of the Championship and are playing consistently in the Premier League. So fair play to him. And yeah, Brighton, they'll be fine. They'll be fine. It's just a blip in this kind of race at the moment.
Yeah, it was. We expected more goals, slightly disappointed, but never mind. Elsewhere, we do absolutely. I can't believe we've not got there yet. I just need to find the banner because I can't believe we've delayed it this long. Oh, Chelsea. What is happening? What is happening? Now, I don't know if you saw the video of Cesar Azpilicueta trying to get all the players riled in the tunnel. And he's like, come on, boys. We fucking win this. Come on. And he runs up and everyone else is just like, just no expression, nothing. They all just stroll onto the pitch. I was like, that's all right.
Yeah.
At least the players are only on 8-year contracts. You'll be fine. I'm sure, Chelsea. I'm sure you'll be fine. That was depressing. That was a depressing performance from Chelsea. Bottom of the league. Now, Ward-Prowse, we need to talk about his fantastic free kick technique, like how he gets both legs off the ground as he hits it. Just a beautiful, beautiful goal. But obviously, sorry, Southampton fans, we're going to talk about Chelsea. What the frig is going on there? Again, it feels like... Why did they not buy a striker? Adam, what is happening at Chelsea? Andy, I'll get your thoughts in a minute. Why didn't they buy a striker?
Well, technically, they did have a striker who was just bloody useless. But
yeah,
just to bring
it
back to the Southampton connection, I've heard this stat today. Graham Potter has actually got a worse win percentage than Nathan Jones. And that just mind-boggling, which kind of shows how painful it is. But yeah, I think it's 4 wins in the last 15 games as well. They've conceded, I think it's 11 goals so far this season, or in that kind of range, should I say, in that kind of split period. But it's not looking too pretty at the moment. And I bet you're glad you didn't sign Mudryk at the moment because he looks terrible.
He lost possession 20 times.
It was just incredible. But I think what's mesmerising is that they seem to be losing players that have been like kind of the focal point of Chelsea. So Mason Mount's refused to sign a new contract. Kante looks like he's definitely gone, for example. Sam Gallagher only coming on as a sub. But interestingly, like even Chelsea fans are shouting at the manager to do something. There's apparently when Cesar Azpilicueta went down on the deck, if you remember, basically one of the Chelsea fans says, fucking do something, Potter. Have a word with your players. And apparently Reece James and Potter looks up. Then he kind of murmured to himself and then decided to pretend he was talking to someone. Like, it was just baffling, but it's not pretty. I don't think Chelsea fans are going to give him time. And if they don't win against Dortmund, I think that's curtains. I think he's gone before the end of the season. I can't see him surviving. I don't know what.
Well, they are now as close to the relegation zone as they are to the European places. It could be Tommy Tuchel who keeps them in the Premier League if it continues like this. We do not know. But Andy, for Southampton, we need to give him a bit of plaudits, right? Not dig in on Chelsea too much. Classic no new manager bounce. I did see in James Ward-Prowse's post-match, he said, it feels like a clean slate. There's a bit of fresh air. There was definitely a few digs about that prick's gone. So now we can concentrate.
I think it's just the not being Nathan Jones bounce. It's I think that's the only bounce they needed, to be honest. And it probably still looks like that decision will probably cost Southampton very, very dearly. But it's a fantastic result for them. They've dug in, and it is the kind of result where that can maybe spur them on to get a few wins on the bounce. They've struggled all season really, but they have got what I would say are very some winnable games coming up. They've got Southampton, Leeds coming up. Which I think is a winnable game for given where Leeds are very vital.
They feel like the Salernitana of the Premier League.
They've obviously got Brentford at home, even Leicester City at home. They'll probably fancy their chance of maybe getting a couple of results. They've got Southampton as well in the next few. West Ham in the next few weeks as well. So they've got games which they'll probably look at and think they can probably get points out of this season. And even towards the end of the season, they've got Nottingham Forest, they've got Fulham, Bournemouth. They're running towards the end of the season could be a lot worse than it is. But all right, they've got Liverpool last game of the season, but I've seen Liverpool at the end of the season when they've got nothing to play for. They got battered 6-0 by Stoke once, so they'll probably be all right. So yeah, I think they've got a long way to go, and but if a 1-0 when he gets Chelsea away from home doesn't give you a bit of impetus, then I don't know what will.
No, I think you're right, and I was really impressed with Bednarek at the back. I thought it was really good. I thought Bazunu made some really good saves. Love that guy; he's a great goalkeeper. Really want to keep him in the Premier League. I thought he made some big saves. They defended incredibly well, full on committed defending, and Ainsley, Maitland-Niles blocking a goal as well. Good to see Arsenal getting involved there as well. Love that. But the only other results in the Premier League, really, we need to very quickly talk about Gakpo and Nunez both scoring for Liverpool. Gakpo now got a few goals in the last few games now, starting to look like he's finding his feet in the Premier League, and Liverpool find themselves only 3 points behind Fulham with a game in hand. Could Liverpool somehow find themselves in Europe this year after what has been an unmitigated disaster of a season? I think it would be really impressive, and I like the Gakpo and Nunez seem to be I think Nunez is getting a lot of stick. I've said it on the pod before, but I like that they seem to be forming a bit of a partnership. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, I think he's always been a good player. I just always felt that he was a player that would, in time, get better and better. I think you can't just judge him on this season, but certainly the signs are there that when he's on form and he can shoot as he does sometimes, then he can get the ball in the back of the net. And Gakpo, we know about his credentials. I just think it was just a case of working out how he works in that system. And the fact that we saw Diego Jota come back as well as Firmino, I think obviously once you've got the core players back, then they'll feel a little bit more settled. It doesn't kind of distract away from the areas that need attention. So that midfield still needs some reinforcements. However, certainly if you think about what attacking options Liverpool have now going forward, it's a scary prospect. So, I think if you've compared them to the likes of your Brighton and Fulham players or teams even, then they've certainly got a slightly better set of players to bring on now. So
I think also, I was just thinking in the centre midfield, Stefan Bajcetic.
He's been great, right?
He's been, and I think we've been saying all season they need something different in midfield to what they've been doing all season, because with Henderson and Fabinho, not Thiago, all struggling with their fitness this season. I feel like we've obviously not been able to do it with transfer market, so they've obviously had to look from within, and that's what they've done. And I think they did quite a good analysis on them as well. And I think a little bit like Xabi Alonso in some ways, where he can sit deep, spray it about, he links the play really nicely between sort of midfield and attack. And I think even though he's an 18-year-old kid, I think certainly between now and the summer, he gives Liverpool a bit more balance.
Breathing space, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Breathing space and also balance as well. It feels like they've slowly, unfortunately, but it feels like they're slowly getting their shit together.
And for them to do it so mid-season, I think is actually quite impressive. If they can turn this into still getting European football, I think that's huge. We do have to very quickly say, though, they were massively helped by Nick Pope. And this narrative that is forming of, just let him play the final, it's baffling to me, because if it was Emi Martinez, nobody would be saying that, right?
No.
Because not one person would be going, let him play the final. Villa haven't won a cup in years. Let him play the final. I find it a really odd narrative that a lot of the kind of Gary Neville, not Gary Neville, Gary Lineker, and a lot of pundits are talking about. Does anyone else find it utterly mad? I was like, what are you talking about?
The thing is, he's not the first or last player that will miss a final.
No.
I remember with Manchester United, Darren Fletcher missed out at Champions League finals due to stupid yellow cards.
Roy Keane missed one, eh?
Roy Keane, Paul Scholes have missed out.
Yeah.
There's big players that have missed out on absolutely huge games. It's just part and parcel of football, and unfortunately, he's done. If you handle it, he got caught in a panic. He panicked. You can see he was panicking, and that's what ultimately happens. And I think it's less about Nick Pope being sent off and more about what replacements are there as a backup. So their backup keeper is
there is a narrative forming there, Andy, and I'd be
there's
quite
also
scared if I were you.
there is, and you know what, there is a possibility because Dubravka obviously played 2 League Cup matches for Manchester United, and yes, he really was at Manchester United for a few months. Sometimes forget that happened, but it did. And then their backup is Loris Karius, who infamously was made to walk alone by the Liverpool fans. Really recovered since. And he's had a few loan spells at Besiktas, and it's just generally speaking not worked out for him, which is why he's third choice at Newcastle. But it would be a very Manchester United thing to happen for him to rock up at Wembley, put in the absolute performance of his life. So
all I'm going to say is on the run to that Champions League final, he did play all the games and keep like 6 clean sheets. I think there is a narrative forming here that he could just have a worldie, but we all know he's just going to throw one into his net. We all know that's going to happen because that's life is cruel, unfortunately. But before we go, we do need to very quickly do 2 things. We need to say, firstly, that our thoughts and prayers go out to the family and friends of Christian Atsu after it was sadly announced that he had died in the earthquake in Turkey. I think this whole thing obviously is incredibly sad. What really annoyed me was the way the story was reported on Sky Sports and by Fabrizio Romano, where they reported the fact that he had been found. He announced it like it was a transfer deal. I found the whole thing incredibly distasteful. And I just want to say all of our sympathy from the pod. I'm sure I speak for Adam and Andy here as well. All of our sympathies go to the family and friends of Christian Atsu. Incredibly sad news. We are going to have a very quick break, and then we're going to do a very, very quick Champions League preview. Here we are, Champions League preview. And the big news is, boys, I'm going to be at Inter Porto. I am stupidly excited about this Champions League knockout game at the San Siro. We saw what the atmosphere was like at Milan Spurs, right? You know, the Inter fans are going to see it and be like, right, we need to go one bigger. I am crazy excited about this game. I managed to get my lesson covered so I can sneak off a little bit early, join the boys for a few beers at the stadium. I can't wait. So the games this week in the Champions League, of course, we have Inter versus Porto, but that's on Wednesday. First, on Tuesday, we have Liverpool hosting Real Madrid. This feels like a semi-final. It was, of course, the final last year. Andy, in one sentence, how do you feel this game goes?
I think, and you'll be happy to hear, I think Inter will do it. I think they've got enough quality in the bank to do that, to get a result. So, I think ultimately Inter will see it through.
I hope so. Adam, your thoughts on Liverpool, Real Madrid?
Oh, I think it's going to be tight. I fancy this to be a draw.
A draw. Nice. I like it. Let's go for the next one. Eintracht Frankfurt, Napoli. We've all been talking about Napoli's chances. Are they the dark horses for the Champions League? I feel sorry for Frankfurt. I think Napoli are going to absolutely hit this one into the bleachers, as the Americans would say. Don't know why that came to my mind. Andy, what do you think for Napoli Frankfurt?
Oh, it's good. I think it could be nasty for Frankfurt, to be honest. It could be a nasty one, because I think even if Napoli put out a heavily rotated squad, as we've seen a few times this season, with Cavradonna and Osimhen, they could still score 4 or 5 easy.
Plenty in the bank. And the only other game is RB Leipzig against Man City. Adam, what do you think about this one? I'm intrigued. I'm stroking my beard. I'm intrigued by this one.
Yeah, I think Man City will do the job, though. I can see them winning. It's not like Leipzig have been that convincing in the league, to be fair. So I think they might get away with a win. Yeah.
Nice. Now we need to very quickly go to the Cool Kids Club. That is the Europa League. And we have Andy, you're up against Barcelona. It's at home. How do we feel about it?
Well, to be fair, we probably should have finished off Barcelona at the new camp, which would have been an incredible result. But no, I think 2-2 draw with going back to Old Trafford is a good result to come back with. I wouldn't say we're definitely going to win, but I think we certainly have a very, very good chance of doing so.
Nice.
And I think if we could beat Barcelona, that's probably the strongest team still left in the competition out.
Sorry. Yes. Yeah. No.
Bad cough, man.
Moving on, we do have Nantes hosting Juve after a massive 1-1 draw in Turin. We've not really been able to cover. Elsewhere, Midtjylland getting a 1-1 draw. They so nearly beat Sporting. Sporting got a last-minute equaliser. We've got Monaco Leverkusen 3-2. That is. Roma need to overturn a 1-0 loss in Salzburg as they host the Austrians. There's some very, very exciting ties in the Europa League. And of course, Union Berlin against Ajax. That's currently 0-0. I don't think it's going to end that way. And then in the even cooler kids club, which is the Conference League, we have the big games. Lazio did get a 1-0 win against Cluj. They now go to Romania to try and get the job done. Partizan did beat Sheriff 1-0. Sorry, Andy. Maybe Sheriff can turn that around and get a 2-1 win. Fiorentina scored all their goals as they beat Braga 4-0, so they should get through. And Lech Poznan Bodo Glimt was 0-0. Hopefully, Lech Poznan can get through. We want to see some Polish representation in European football. It's been a while. Listeners, viewers, everybody, we are finished. That is a long episode. Thank you for sticking with us. We love you all. Guys, anything to say before I send these people off?
No, always enjoyable.
Yep, lovely to be on as always.
Beautiful. So, guys, as always, thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe down here. Follow us on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod, on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod. Find us on LinkedIn. Subscribe, all them things. It's been a long day, guys. We will see you on Friday morning.